Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join real estate entrepreneur and mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, welcome back to Construct Your Life. This is Austin Linney here. I have Brent in the house. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great, Austin. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to share today.
So when I was doing a little research about you, I think you had a typo in there because there's no way that you paid off 958. I thought it was 95,000.
Yeah.
So there's no way you paid off almost $1 million in debt in 38 months? Is that what it is?
Yeah. Actually, Austin, it was $984,711 in 39 months, 3 years and 3 months, all by adding one step to my financial life.
No, you're a liar. See, I don't believe it. I don't
I
believe,
know.
you know what's interesting about, I tell people I've coached people for 5 years, right? And, I was a former alcoholic. I was a drug addict. So I've coached people through addiction. I've coached people through abuse, divorce, all the things, right? The two hardest clients I've ever had was two clients that had to file for bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Because of the shame of that we don't talk about money, right? And for me, it wasn't until I worked at a private equity firm that I realized how money works. You start learning, we're getting our money from Blackstone, blah blah blah. You're starting to realize all these different things, right? When you're out there preaching your message and you're talking about, debt as a whole, when used properly, I'm not saying anything people don't know, it could be great. But when it's not, and you get over your skis like you were, it feels like a noose. I mean, for lack of a better word, it feels like a noose around your neck. It suffocates your thoughts. It suffocates everything. Is that what you see when you talk to people? Is they've just got them a place and they don't even know how to start?
Yeah, well, exactly right. And so people, they just right. The thing is sometimes that they have no idea how they even got there. It just
Mhm.
happens, and it's kind of like boiling a frog in water. You turn the heat up slowly, and they don't even
Mhm.
realize they're boiling. Just so like to their death, and in this context, and just to their like financial death. Um, and but yeah, it is a problem, in our country, the debt load. And I mean, even if you've been watching the news lately, how people are just like continuing to get more and more in debt because they can't afford the stuff that they're having to buy for their everyday lives. So they're putting it
Mhm.
on credit cards. And then when they put it on credit cards, they're not making the full payment every month because they can't afford to do it, or they're making the minimum monthly payment. And so, as you know, by making a minimum monthly payment on a credit card, you never ever get ahead because you're paying that interest. So
Mhm.
that's the thing that I teach, is how to keep control of your money and not pay that excess interest to other people, to keep that money inside of your family. Because again, like you said, Austin, there's good debt and there's bad debt. And so like part of that dollars that I had, almost $1 million in debt, it wasn't all bad debt. I mean, a lot of it was debt that was okay. I went to chiropractic college, so I had
Mhm.
student loans. Well, I took out loans to go to chiropractic school so I could have a much better education to be able to provide better for my family. So that necessarily is not bad debt, but then you get people that are going and they're spending and using their credit cards to go to Walt Disney World, and they can't afford to go, but they're going to use it to do that, or they're going to go to Starbucks every day and use their credit cards for that, and they really can't afford to do it. So there is a difference between the good debt and the bad debt. I totally agree.
So, what for you and your personal journey? What was the linchpin or the wake up moment for you where you realized like I can't do the thing I'm doing anymore, and you're staring at that huge number? What was the catalyst?
Yeah, well, again, this concept called the infinite banking concept, which I
Mhm.
now teach and which I learned, right? Again, so it's nothing that I invented. There's a guy that wrote a book named R. Nelson Nash, and he wrote this book, Becoming Your Own Banker. And I was at a chiropractic conference one time and I heard somebody speak on this concept. And I was like, that looks really good, but it just seems too good to be true, right? There's no way you could possibly do that.
Yeah.
And that was back in 2006, Austin. And I
Yeah.
heard that message. And for 2 years, I did nothing. I did nothing at all to change my financial life for 2 years because I thought
Mhm.
the message was too good to be true. So I was at this conference. It was at a chiropractic conference, and I heard the message and I heard it, thought it was too good to be true. I did nothing. I went home back to my normal chiropractic life. And then about 2 years later, I go back to another conference where 10 or 12 of my colleagues that were at the previous conference are now at this conference. The only difference between them and me is they acted upon the information that they heard and I didn't. So they were actually applying this knowledge and this concept in their own life. So I
Mhm.
thought to
Mhm.
myself, there had to be something to it. There's no way that 10 or 12 of my colleagues are lying to me. Maybe one or two, but not 10 or 12. So I
Mhm.
came
Mhm.
home and it was in February of 2008. And I told my wife, I said, honey, I said, we have to start implementing this concept in our life. And that's when we did. And again, it took us 3 years and 3 months to pay off all of that debt that we owed to other people. Now, a lot of that debt was for our house that we owned. It was also for our student loans. It was for my chiropractic clinic. I also had a condo at the Lake of the Ozarks, and if you have a condo at the lake, you have to have a boat and a wave runner, right? So I had debt there. I'm an airplane pilot, so I had an airplane, so I had debt there. It didn't take me a lot to become almost $1 million in debt, and I just applied this concept and this principle, and I guess I'm like, unlike a lot of other people where I really didn't think about it day in and day out. I just kept plugging away, plugging away, plugging
Mhm.
away. I figured the more money I made, it would eventually go away. But it just kind of kept adding on, or because the thing is the one thing Nelson Nash says in that book, Becoming Your Own Banker, it says after you experience a luxury, it now becomes a necessity, right?
Mhm.
So if people experience luxuries, they're like, it's no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. And the example of that, could you ever imagine buying a car without air conditioning? You know,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
because you've
Yeah.
experienced an air conditioner car and you
Mhm.
don't want to go
Mhm.
back to a car
Mhm.
without air conditioner, right? So,
Yeah.
um, anyway, just for me, I knew that I had to do something different because I was working hard. I was exchanging my hours for dollars, but I wasn't keeping most of that money. Most of that money was going out to other people, which was the creditors that I owed because I created this mountain of debt. And it's not anybody else's fault but my own. It's my own fault, but I
Mhm.
just had to do something different. And I never knew that exactly just what that entailed, what that different thing was, until I discovered that book, Becoming Your Own Banker, and I applied those principles and completely changed my financial life. And now I get to travel around the country and teach it to others.
And it's weird, right? My dad, 46 years, my dad was a dentist, probably one of the best in Texas. So very familiar. He does syndication real estate in his mastermind with his other dentists, right?
Yeah.
And when he was a kid, he tells me the story all the time. When I was a kid and I was in dental school, I was interning for a guy who had struck out and failed in real estate on the side, and he told my dad, offhanded comment, stick to what you know, don't do anything different. And my dad will tell you in fear he didn't do anything different besides make a bunch of money. And when he got re engaged with other avenues outside and understood how it worked, he regrets all those years that he didn't put his financial future in a positive light, right? And for me, when I found infinite banking from one of my buddies, same as you, I said, this is bullshit. I said, there's
Yeah.
no way that the rich people are doing this and not telling anybody, right? Like, but then when you understand it, right? And I'll show you how important it is. This is how crazy it is because we're creating something that will never be competed with. So we had big plans for our private equity firm. And we want to buy small businesses, affect small towns. We are actually implementing an infinite banking plan for all of our employees. And so
Absolutely.
we're talking about guys that, and they're starting to learn about it. And my sales guys are going, dude, in like 3 years, dude, I'm gonna be like freaking rolling in it. And I'm like, yeah. And it's only gonna grow from there. And I try to tell people all the time, I'm 40. Anytime I meet anybody 20, 18, they said, what should I do? I said, get an infinite banking policy, a whole life insurance, start now. So at
Yes.
40, you're basically just free.
And that is cool that you're 40, Austin. That's where I started, was 40.
Mm-hmm.
I started my first policy in February of 2008. I was
Mm-hmm.
born in September of 1967. So I was 40 and a half when I started my very first policy. And you're absolutely right. The sooner you start, the better. Because see, these policies get bigger as time goes on. They get better every day. It's not me telling you they get better. It is in your policy contract where today's better than yesterday, tomorrow is better than today. So the earlier you start, the better. And what you do is you just keep adding more and more and more policies as time goes on.
Mine's worth my life insurance policy is worth 1.35 million right now, and I've only put in, 15 grand, maybe 12 grand, right? That's amazing, right? And now we're going to supercharge it with this new policy, right? But we've said a lot, and people are like, heads are probably swimming, right? What's the simplest definition? I know this is probably the number one thing I ask every time. What's the simplest way you can explain what this is?
Yeah, so the quickest, easiest definition in my mind of what the infinite banking concept is it helps you to take all of your debts and your expenses and recapture and recycle all of that money. So anyway, okay, so the thing I do is I teach people how to build, keep, and create wealth through their own debts and expenses that they already have. So the thing that people do is they go out and they buy stuff, whatever it is that you want, because it's infinite, any product or service. And I like to use the example of a car because everybody buys cars. They don't only buy one car, they buy multiple cars through their lifetime because they wear out or they get tired of them. So how about if there's a way that I can show you okay, so as far as how you buy that car, not only can you get the car that you purchased, but you can also get all of the money back for that car. So not only do you get the car, but you also get the money back. You recycle and recapture that money, and it stays all in your family. This is exactly, Austin, what the wealthy, as you mentioned, have been doing for over 200 years. Like if you research the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Morgans, the Stanleys, the Barclays, this is all how they built, keep, and create wealth. Go look and see how Walt Disney built Disneyland, how Ray Kroc funded McDonald's, how Warren Buffett, or actually how Pampered Chef got started before Warren Buffett bought Pampered Chef. This is what they do. There's a guy out there named Robert Kiyosaki. He's famous for a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He also wrote a book called Second Chance. Robert Kiyosaki talks about this concept in that book, Second Chance. The only problem with him talking about it is he makes it too difficult to understand and people don't know what the hell's going on, so they just read right through it. So like Tony Robbins wrote a book called Money Master the Game. In chapter 5.4 of that Tony Robbins book, This is exactly what Tony Robbins teaches. So it's not a new concept. It's not new. It's not on trial. It's not being tested. It's been around for over 200 years. So all we're doing now, Austin, is we are applying those concepts and those principles that the wealthy have been using for over 200 years. And as long as all we do is take those tools and use them for ourselves, now our results are going to be the same. Build, keep, and create wealth within your own family the same way that the wealthy has been doing. But the one thing you said earlier, Austin, and just when you were talking about your dad, and again, I talk to a lot of doctors. I do dentist groups, orthodontist groups. I mean, I speak in front of big organizations of only dentists, only orthodontists, chiropractors, things like that, right? So all of those people are pretty good at making money, but most of them suck at keeping their money. That's the problem. They know how to make money, but they suck at keeping it. And so, like, even with your dad, he was probably good at making money, but he was listening to what everybody else was doing at a certain point in his life. And he said, no, 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 this is what you want to do. You want to put your money in a 401k, an IRA, a qualified plan, the pension, and what you want to work for many, many years and pay into all these plans, these qualified plans, and then everything will be good in retirement. Well, that crap is not working for people. People are taking a bloodbath in those plans. So now what we're doing is we're doing a little outside of the box thinking and not doing what our parents did, our grandparents, our friends, our colleagues, and our coworkers. And we're going to take control of our own money, all without taking any additional risk, all without changing your cash flow, all without working any harder, and all with keeping complete control of your money. So essentially, Austin, all we do is add one step to your financial life, not change anything that you're doing, just add one additional step. And when you do that, it is a game changer in your financial life.
And what is that step?
That step is putting money into this infinite banking concept. So in other words, pay yourself first, which, as you stated earlier, what we're going to do is we're going to buy a whole life insurance policy in a mutual company that pays dividends. And that is going to be our wealth building vehicle. Now, I know what a lot of the listeners are thinking right now. They're thinking, whole life insurance? How in hell can I ever build wealth through whole life insurance? Well, this is what banks do. Banks are the #1 purchasers of whole life insurance in the world. As a matter of fact, banks own more whole life insurance than all of their land and their buildings combined. And since 2013, or I'm sorry, I think it's 2014, so about 10 years ago, banks have quadrupled the amount of whole life insurance they've purchased, quadrupled. Now, keep in mind, this is not any type of life insurance policy. No, no, no. It's not the policy that you can go buy from your brother-in-law that sells life insurance, right? We all have a brother-in-law that sells life insurance. It is not that policy. This is a specifically designed, specially engineered whole life policy in a mutual company that pays dividends. It's not a term. It's not an index universal. It's not a variable. It's not a UL. It's a specifically designed whole life policy in a mutual company that pays dividends, Austin, that has high immediate cash value. One more time, high immediate cash value. And my definition of immediate is within 30 days. So what happens is when you put money into this policy, you have cash available immediately. And when I say immediately, within the first 30 days. And you're going to use that money to buy the things that you're buying in life anyway. Your cars, your houses, your investments. It doesn't matter. Any product or service, you're running the money through the policy first. And when you do that, the money stays within your family. There's no money being leaked out to other people. It is a closed system.
Mhm. I think one of the things that people don't understand is and this is just my viewpoint, there's three different types of money, right? And when you have the money dancing, and it's a symbiotic relationship. And what I mean by that is there's short term cash that you generate from a job or a business that you run, there's assets, and then there's wealth creation. And the way that we view business is, yeah, we're making a profit in the company, but that money's going to move through the whole life plan first, right? And then there's two things that are going on. The money's making money on the money. That's number one. The second one is the entire value of the policy can then be leveraged for loans to purchase more companies. So now we're taking that $1 profit, and that dollar's turning into 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, and over a 10-year span, we haven't even touched the money yet, right? And it's been making money the whole time. And one of the things you realize when you study extremely wealthy people is one of the ways they actually make more and more money is their money makes money. It's not like, hey, they're going out and creating something new. It's like, no, they've got all this money and it's in a whole life insurance, or it's in treasury bonds, or whatever it's in. And that's when you realize that the power of money is all about compounding. And the best way to do that is to keep it in your house. My favorite show in the world is Billions, and he's worth 10 billion. And my favorite line of all time is he says, "Yeah, we're wealthy, but they're bankers." And he
Yeah.
goes, "I want to be the bank." And so that's been my dream. I don't want to be at the job site to see if the plumber shows up. That's not my plan. I want to be on a beach in Italy or France, but I want to be the bank. I want to be the bank that lends out the money. So that's my dream. That's what I'm working towards at 50, 60, 70.
And the key thing that you said there, Austin, if I hope like just the audience got the word that you used, motion and movement. You got to keep the money moving. The dollars cannot sit stagnant. They gotta be in motion. And the cool thing about the policy is just as you were stating, any money, any cash value that you use in that policy, it's not you taking the money out of the policy. What you're doing is you're simply putting the policy up for collateral. You're taking a loan from the general fund of the insurance company. So what that means, Austin, is all your money is continuing to grow and compound in a guaranteed tax-free growth rate environment, and the government is completely out of your hair. So in my life, I do exactly what you are saying. I do a lot of lending. I have a lot of properties that I invest in. I have real estate that I have. I have long-term rentals, short-term rentals, Airbnbs. But to be quite honest, every rental property that I have, maybe with the exception of one, I am now going in a different direction. I'm selling all of my properties because I don't want to be the guy that gets the phone call, hey, the toilet doesn't work, the maintenance man isn't here. And even if you have a property manager, they suck just as bad because you got to manage the property managers, right?
Yeah.
They're hard to manage. So the thing that I've really done, and I've actively done this in the last 2.5 years to the tune of almost $9 million of my own money, I have that money loaned out to other people. So again, okay, the thing here is the thing I do. I put my money in the policy. I take a loan from the general fund of the insurance company, and I give that to somebody as a loan.
And what rate are you paying? What rate are you paying the insurance company?
Well, okay, the policy, okay, so remember, the policy has a guaranteed tax-free growth rate with dividends. And no policy right now is given less than 4% with dividends. It's usually in the 5 to almost 6% range, okay? But let's just say 4%. And again, all right, so I have a whole presentation on my website, themoneymultiplier.com, that explains this and shows these calculators. But then I borrow at 6%. That's the example that I use. Now, I don't have any insurance company that charges me 6% to borrow money, but I always like to under promise and over deliver. So I use the example of my money is growing at 4 and I'm borrowing at 6. Now, most people would think, well, if you borrow at 4 or again, I'm sorry. So if you earn 4 and you borrow at 6, then the thing you're losing 2. That's not the case at all, because the money that I'm using is still in the policy compounding and growing. So now I'll take the loan from the general
Mm-hmm.
fund of the insurance company, and I will make a loan to someone. And almost every one of my loans are backed by collateral with real estate. I'm not in second position. I'm in first position. I even have a shirt that says, if you're not first, you're last, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
don't like being in second position. I loan in first position. And I have not made a loan. I was just telling just a guy that is here with me for a couple days on the way over here today before I started this podcast. I have not made a loan in the last 24 months for less than 14% interest.
Mm-hmm.
So the majority of it is my lending is at 16%, where I'll get interest only payments. And there's lots of people out there that'll borrow from you at that amount. Now, it depends kind of where the interest rate environment is. Right now, we're kind of in a higher interest rate environment. So if I was having this conversation with you 4, 5, 6 years ago, I might be telling you I'm getting 10 or 12%.
Yeah, of course.
But now it's 14 to 16.
And what are people going to say, right? I already know what they're going to say. I used to be a hard money lender. People are going to say, well, why would somebody take a loan out at 14%?
Well, let me tell you why they take it out, for 2 main reasons. Number one, so they can't get approved at the bank because their debt to income ratio doesn't match up. And even if they could get a loan from a bank, they don't want to go through the proctology exam they have to go through to get approved for the loan, right? So they don't want to do that. And number two is that they need more money than the bank is willing to loan them. Because see, a banker takes a look at your stuff, and he can only go within a certain guidelines based on his banking regulations of how much he can loan out. And there's terms and restrictions and all of that. So all I care about is, hey, tell me what is the asset that I'm loaning against? What is the collateral? And I'll give you an example of a guy I just loaned money to last month, actually in July. And he bought a house in Buffalo, New York. And so the house cost 1.5 million, and it was appraised at 1.7, and he only had 500 grand to bring to the table. So I said to him, I said, Joe, I said, I'll loan you the money, but you're not going to like my terms. You're going to pay me 16% interest only on the loan. So I loaned him $1 million, 16%. So every month he pays me a check for $13,333. Now, I'm always like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, how about if the loan goes bad? If it goes bad, how do I fall back on it? Well, here's what I do. I fall back on the $1.5 million property, and I'm in first position, and he's got 500,000 of equity in there. So he's not going to go bad on that loan. He's going to figure out just as far as how to pay it, or as far as how to pay me, or if he has to renegotiate the terms. But those are the type of loans that I do. Now, I'm not saying they're all at 16%. Actually, there's a few that are more, but in the last 24 months, I have not loaned anything less than 14% on anything, and I have real estate as collateral.
I had a guy who I was friends with who knew a developer in South Florida who would get her money for like 10%, but there was some construction stuff that she couldn't get loans from a bank. She would pay 25 to 30% on her money. And people would go, why the hell would she do that? She was making 500 to $1 million of profit for every development. She didn't care.
Yeah.
People, they have so many laws and rules around money. For me, when my whole world cracked open when I worked private equity and a hard money lender, is to realize that the entire world revolves around arbitrage.
Yeah.
You're saying 6% to 16%, you're making 10% on your money. You don't have to wait for the contractor there. You don't have to do any of those things. In my eyes, I live my entire life based off of what does my lifestyle look like? Are you going to bother me? And how do I how do I distance myself from having to do anything in the day to day, right? And I know a guy in Arizona who has 5 whole life insurance policies, and he's lending money out, doing flips, he's buying cars, all these things that he's doing. And when you start cracking the code around these things and you start understanding how money works and you start playing around with it, it gets exciting, because then you give yourself really what anybody see. Everybody's This is what's interesting about people. They always say they're after freedom, right? And I get that, and I'm after that too. But I really don't think that's the answer. What they're after is options. And
Yeah.
options provide everything, meaning, can I have that second house over there? And can it make me money? Well, I taught Airbnb for 7 years. I've done hotels. I've done all that stuff all around the country. And I tell people all the same. If you break even on your first Airbnb and you get to use it 3 times a year, you've won. That's it. So that's the game. Start the game there. Don't try to go be a multifamily investor. Don't give a little loan out. Send it out for 6 months. More importantly, see how you feel about that loan, right? Did you
Yeah.
put the right stipulations in place? People are trying to take it to the 10-yard line, and they haven't even gone to the first yard line. Get a policy, put some money in it, see how that feels. You know what they talk about all the time? It's amazing how quick we could justify higher prices of things. Oh, we're going to bitch and moan about gas for a couple weeks, and then nobody talks about it anymore. I don't know how I'm going to get that high car payment. Well, you figure it out. And so when you start taking money, Profit First was one of my favorite books ever. And he talks about, take money out of the business to run it the right way. This is the same thing with policy. Take money out of your life, and I promise you'll figure out ways to make more money, and then you'll thank yourself in a couple years.
Yeah, no, absolutely right, man. And it's a kind of like you said, you got to start somewhere. Don't go jump in the ocean if you've never gotten like swam before, right? Go ahead and start in the pool at the shallow end, put on your little floaties on the arm and just get wet. You have to start. And that's the thing that we tell people with policies, like, hey, it's just important to start. It doesn't matter the amount that you start, because after you start and you see how the concept works, you're going to do more and more and more. And it kind of reminded me of a story that I think it was back in 2012 or maybe 2013. I mean, it was 10, right? It was 10 plus years ago, but not a long
Mm-hmm.
time. I was nervous to make my first loan. There was a guy that wanted to buy this car. It was like the car was like $120,000. He needed it as a status symbol. So I was talking to my colleague and I said, hey, I'm a little nervous about doing that car loan. And this was going to be at 12% interest, and it was 120 grand. And my colleague said, well, either the thing, Brent, either go ahead and give him the loan for the car, or I'm going to do it myself. So I thought to myself, okay, so if I don't do it, he's going to do it. So anyway, how it ended out is I was still a little nervous about it. So I asked him, his name was Ray. And I said, Ray, are you willing to go in half with me? I'll do half of the loan. I'll finance 60 grand and you finance 60 grand. And he said, yeah. So that's what we did. And that was the very first loan that I did. And so he made payments for 5 full years. It was a 5-year loan. He took it out the whole entire term. He paid out for 5 years or 60 months. So then I'm like, well, this is pretty cool. So then I did another one and another one and another one. And they just kept going on and on and on. So now when this guy calls me and says, I want to borrow $1 million for a $1.5 million house, the only thing I thought of is like, okay, here's the interest rate and here's the terms, and I need to be in first position on the collateral. What is the collateral? The collateral is the property. Well, what is the appraisal on the property? It's 1.7. So to me, it was a no-brainer to loan $1 million on a $1.7 million house, because worst case scenario happens, he doesn't pay. Now I own that $1.7 million house, because I will foreclose on him the same way a bank would foreclose if you don't make the payments.
That's so great. So if people want to find out about the podcast, they want to go to your website, they want to learn more about this, how would they do that?
Yeah. So anyway, our website is www.themoneymultiplier.com. So TheMoneyMultiplier.com. themoneymultiplier.com. I also have on there like where you can go and it says watch Brent now. I have a complete presentation. It's 90 plus minutes long, how I break down and give examples of how you take this money and you use it to buy the things you're buying in life anyway. I go through an example where a guy paid off almost $470,000 of third-party debt in 61 months. And so there's a lot of resources on there as well on that website. And then also my daughter, Hannah, her name is Hannah Kesler. She has a podcast. So basically, wherever you get your podcast, just go to themoneymultiplier.com, and she's got 70 plus episodes. She's 24 years old. She shows you how she buys her real estate, her customized van that we were kind of talking about offline before the call, just with her. So she's teaching people around the country. And then I travel around the country and I speak on stage on this concept, whether it's Zoom or virtual or podcast or even like live events around the country. I mean, anyway, just go to our website and you will see all of the resources and the places that we're speaking live, and we're constantly updating that all of the time. And the last thing I'll offer your listeners is if they go to the website, there is a book that I wrote with a colleague of mine named Chris Noggle. It's called Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery. And if you want that ebook, just go to the website and anyway, they'll send you the ebook for free, the whole entire book, Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery.
Love it. I think the important lesson here as I leave you guys is that no matter what you grew up in or where you came from, you are the beginning of the changing of the generations for your family. So if your family didn't grow up with a lot, the resources are available out there for you to change the direction of generational wealth, but more importantly, generational mindset is out there. So these aren't sales pitches, these aren't whatever they are. They're just tactics and tools that people have been using for years. One of my favorite podcasts is called Founders. I just found it a couple of weeks ago. And he basically goes through biographic books of all the rich families, all the high-end business people, and tells their stories, right? And you just hear the same thing over and over again, right? That they have had these tools necessary and they've let them compound over years and years and years. And so it's about getting in the game and starting as small as you start and let it grow. And so that's why this episode and these conversations are so important. So please go check out the website. If you got some value from this, send it to a friend, share it with somebody, and we'll see you next time, guys.